I love the corpus. Great. Exciting. Good afternoon. Thank you all for joining us for our Banned Books Week readout. I'm Jennifer Podolsky, and it's an honor to be the Executive Director of the Princeton Public Library. I'm really looking forward to hearing from some of our readers, but before we get started, I wanted to first thank Jeannie Herman and her wonderful team and all the library staff involved for organizing this event. Thank you so much. I know how much work goes into this. They make it look easy time and time again, but it's a lot of work. Thank you so much. I'd also like to read parts of a letter that we received this week from Governor Murphy, who was unable to be here with us today, but wished us a successful event. In part, it reads, on behalf of the entire state of New Jersey, I'm pleased to extend a warm welcome to all of those gathered for the Readout for Banned Books Week event, highlighting the Princeton Public Library as a book sanctuary. Your commitment to educating about book bans, collecting and protecting endangered books, and making them accessible does not go unnoticed. I join proudly with family, friends, and colleagues during Banned Books Week to applaud the Princeton Public Library for your outstanding contributions throughout many years to create a sense of creativity, innovation, and openness that allows the library to foster an environment that is inclusive and educational. Thank you to the governor. We appreciate that he took the time to acknowledge this important event today. Please join me in welcoming Senator Andrew Zwicker.
Thank you. I am beyond thrilled to see so many people here today. And it is genuinely just shocking and outrageous that in 2024 that we are here to talk about censorship. We are here to try to stop books from being banned, from ideas and books that open worlds for young people and people of all ages, from even being read. 92% increase in the number of titles that are being banned right now is simply outrageous. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about where things stand when it comes to New Jersey, and then I get the distinct honor of reading a passage from the first banned book. And I know there's a whole bunch of people here who are also going to read from banned books. So, the perks of being a wallflower. Patrick then said something I don't think I'll ever forget. He's a wallflower. And Bob really nodded his head, and the whole room nodded their head. And I started to feel nervous in the Bob way, but Patrick didn't let me get too nervous. He sat down next to me. You see things, you keep quiet about them, and you understand. I didn't know that other people thought things about me. I didn't know that they looked. I was sitting on the floor of a basement of my first real party between Sam and Patrick, and I remember that Sam introduced me as her friend to Bob. And I remember that Patrick had done the same for Brad. And I started to cry. And nobody in that room looked at me weird for doing it. And then I really started to cry. Bob raised his drink and asked everyone to do the same. To Charlie. And the whole group said, to Charlie. After the dance, we left in Sam's pickup. Patrick was driving this time. As we were approaching the Fort Pitt Tunnel, Sam asked Patrick to pull to the side of the road. I didn't know what was going on. Sam then climbed in the back of the pickup wearing nothing but her dance dress. She told Patrick to drive, and he got this smile on his face. I guess they had done this before. Anyway, Patrick started driving really fast, and just before we got to the tunnel, Sam stood up, and the wind turned her dress into ocean waves. And when we hit the tunnel, all the sound got scooped up into a vacuum and was replaced by a song on the tape player, a beautiful song called Landslide. When we got out of the tunnel, Sam screamed this really fun scream, and there it was, downtown, lights on buildings, and everything that makes you wonder. Sam sat down and started laughing. Patrick started laughing, and I started laughing. And in that moment, I swear we were infinite. Love always, Charlie. The perks of being a wallflower. Thank you, everyone.
Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter from Birmingham jail is a significant written document of the civil rights era. Written while he was imprisoned for leading nonviolent civil rights demonstrations in Alabama in 1963, the letter explains why Dr. King believed people had a responsibility to follow just laws and a duty to break unjust ones. 16 April, 1963. My dear fellow clergymen, I am here because I have organizational ties here. But more basically, I am in Birmingham because injustice is here. Just as the prophets of the 8th century BC left their villages and carried their "Thus saith the Lord" far beyond the boundaries of their hometowns, and just as the Apostle Paul left his village of Tarsus and carried the gospel of Jesus Christ to the far corners of the Greco-Roman world, so I am compelled to carry the gospel of freedom beyond my hometown. Like Paul, I must constantly respond to the Macedonian call for aid. Moreover, I am cognizant of the interrelatedness of all communities and states. I cannot sit idly by in Atlanta and not be concerned about what happens in Birmingham. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. Never again can we afford to live with the narrow, provincial, outside agitator idea. Anyone who lives inside the United States can never be considered an outsider anywhere within its bounds. One day the South will know that when these disinherited children of God sat down at lunch counters, they were in reality standing up for what is best in the American dream and for the most sacred values in our Judeo-Christian heritage, thereby bringing our nation back to those great wells of democracy which were dug deep by the founding fathers in the formulation of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. If I have said anything in this letter that overtakes the truth and indicates an unreasonable impatience, I beg you to forgive me. If I have said anything that understates the truth and indicates my having a patience that allows me to settle for anything less than brotherhood, I beg God to forgive me.
When I look at the list of books that are being banned and the list from which people will read today, I'm just appalled. These are books by people of color, they're books by Jewish people, queer people. They're all books by people whose lives don't fit neatly into the tenets of white Christian nationalism. These are the books that are particularly under attack here. And we take the point that it's not just about books. It's also about ways of being in the world that don't align with dominant conservative values and narratives. And so today, and I hope every day, we read out loud the words that would be erased or banned or even burned. I've selected The Diary of a Young Girl by Anne Frank, not just because it remains a touchstone for Holocaust education in this country and the world, but because Frank's voice, even at such a young age, is so morally direct, so ethically clear, and so hopeful, even in the face of the evil in which her life was ensnared and finally exterminated. The notion that these words would be banned and that young people would no longer be able to read them again, is appalling. This is from her entry of Wednesday, January 13th, 1943. And as you know, she addresses each of her entries, "Dearest Kitty." Terrible things are happening outside. At any time of night and day, poor, helpless people are being dragged out of their homes. They're allowed to take only a knapsack and a little cash with them, and even then, they're robbed of these possessions on the way. Families are torn apart. Men, women, and children are separated. Children come home from school to find that their parents have disappeared. Women return from shopping to find their houses sealed, their families gone. The Christians in Holland are also living in fear because their sons are being sent to Germany. Everyone is scared. Every night, hundreds of planes pass over Holland on their way to German cities to sow their bombs on German soil. Every hour, hundreds or maybe even thousands of people are being killed in Russia and Africa. No one can keep out of the conflict. The entire world is at war, and even though the Allies are doing better, the end is nowhere in sight. And for us, we're quite fortunate, luckier than millions of people. It's quiet and safe here, and we're using our money to buy food. We're so selfish that we talk about after the war and look forward to new clothes and shoes when actually we should be saving every penny we can to help others when the war is over, to salvage whatever we can. I could spend hours telling you about the suffering the war has brought, but I'd only make myself more miserable. All we can do is wait as calmly as possible for it to end. Jews and Christians alike are waiting, the whole world is waiting, and many are waiting for death. Yours, Anne. In spite of everything, I still believe that people are really good at heart. I simply can't build up my hopes on a foundation consisting of confusion, misery, and death. I see the world being turned into a wilderness. I hear ever-approaching thunder, which will destroy us too. I can feel the sufferings of millions, and yet, if I look up into the heavens, I think that it will come out all right, that this cruelty too will end, and that peace and tranquility will return again.
But it's not very unlucky to kill a spider, James inquired, looking around at the others. Of course it's unlucky to kill a spider, shouted the centipede. It's about the unluckiest thing anyone can do. Look what happened to Aunt Sponge after she'd done that. Bump? We all felt it, didn't we, as the peach went over her? Oh, what a lovely bump that was. That must have been for you, Miss Spider. It was very satisfactory, Miss Spider answered. Will you sing us a song about it? So the centipede did. Aunt Sponge was terribly fat and tremendously flabby at that. Her tummy and waist were as soggy as paste. It was worse on the place where she sat. So she said, I must make myself flat. I must make myself sleek as a cat. I shall do without dinner to make myself thinner. But along came the peach, oh, the beautiful peach, and made her far thinner than that. That was very nice, Miss Spider said. Now sing one about Aunt Spiker. With pleasure, the centipede answered. Aunt Spiker was thin as a wire and as dry as a bone, only drier. She was so long and thin, if you carried her in, you could use her for poking the fire. I must do something quickly, she frowned. I want fat, I want pound upon pound. I must eat lots and lots of marshmallows and chocks till I start bulging out all around. Yes, she announced, I have sworn that I'll alter my figure by dawn, cried the peach with a snigger. I'll alter your figure, and ironed her out on the lawn. Everybody clapped and called out for more songs from the centipede, who at once launched into his favourite song of all. Once upon a time, when pigs were swine, and monkeys chewed tobacco, and hens took snuff to make themselves tough, and the ducks said quack, quack, quacko, and porcupines drank fiery wines, and goats ate tapioca, and old Mother Hubbard got stuck in the Look out, centipede, cried James. Look out! This book was banned because it spoke of drugs, it's tobacco, it spoke of advocating communism, it spoke of advocating disobedience when James disobeyed his aunts, and it was too scary for the targeted audience. and it was too magical and mystical. Let's make sure no more books get banned. Thank you.
Monday, November 4th, 2013. By 4:30 in the afternoon, the mad rush of after-school passengers has come and gone. What's left are stragglers and stay-laters, swiping their bus passes as they climb onto the 57 bus and take seats among the coming-home workers, the shoppers and errand-doers, the other students from high schools and middle schools around the city. The bus is loud, but not as loud as sometimes. A few clusters of kids are shouting and laughing, and an older woman at the front keeps talking to the driver. Dark is coming on. Daylight savings ended yesterday, and now evening rushes into the place where afternoon used to be. Everything is duskier, sleepier, wintrier now. Passengers look at their phones or stare through the scratched and grimy windows at the waning light. Sasha sits near the back. For much of the journey, the teenager has been reading a paperback copy of Anna Karenina for a class in Russian literature. Today, like most days, Sasha wears a t-shirt, a black fleece jacket, a gray flat cap, and a gauzy white skirt. A senior at a small private high school, the teenager identifies as agender, neither male nor female. As the bus lumbers through town, Sasha puts down the book and drifts into sleep, skirt draped over the edge of the seat. A few feet away, 3 teenage boys are laughing and joking. One of them, Richard, wears a black hoodie and an orange-billed New York Knicks hat. Sasha sleeps as Richard and his companions goof around, play fighting. Sleeps as Richard's cousin Lloyd bounds up and down the aisle flirting with the girl up front. Sleeps as Richard surreptitiously flicks a lighter and touches it to the hem of that gauzy white skirt. In a moment, Sasha will wake up inside a ball of flame and begin to scream. In a moment, everything will be set in motion. Taken by ambulance to a San Francisco burn unit, Sasha will spend the next 3.5 weeks undergoing multiple surgeries to treat 2nd and 3rd degree burns running from calf to thigh. Arrested at school the following day, Richard will be charged with 2 felonies, each with a hate crime clause that will add time to his sentence if he is convicted. Citing the severity of the crime, the district attorney will charge him as an adult, stripping him of the protections normally given to juveniles. Before the week is out, he will be facing the possibility of life imprisonment. But none of that has happened yet. For now, both teenagers are just taking the bus home from school. I love this book. Slater combines the language and power of poetry with a thorough analysis of a research paper. It was incredibly important to me when I read it, and I feel strongly that everyone else who needs to read it should have access to it. Thank you.
I brought my 2 daughters with me here today because to me, this book is a book I hope really inspires them, as young Pakistani Americans to see kind of the potential they have to stand up for a world that they believe in. So I will be reading from this. I have a timer, and I'll be reading a few excerpts. But first, I wanted to read the dedication. To those children all over the world who have no access to education, to those teachers who bravely continue teaching, and to anyone who has fought for their basic human rights and education. By the time I was 8 years old, my father had more than 800 students and 3 campuses, an elementary division and 2 high schools, 1 for boys and 1 for girls. So our family finally had enough money to buy a TV. That's when I became obsessed with owning a magic pencil. I got the idea from Shakalaka Boom Boom, the show Safina and I watched after school. It was about a boy named Sanju who could make anything real by drawing it. As I tossed our rubbish onto the heap, I saw something move. I jumped. It was a girl my age. Her hair was matted and her skin was covered in sores. She was sorting rubbish into piles, 1 for cans, 1 for bottles. Nearby, boys were fishing in the pile for metal using magnets on strings. I wanted to talk to them, but I was scared. Later that day, when my father returned home, I told him about the children at the dump. I asked him why they weren't in school. He told me that these children were supporting their families, selling whatever they found for a few rupees. If they went to school, their families would go hungry. As we walked back home, I saw tears on his cheek. I believe there is something good for every evil, that every time there's a bad person, God sends a good one. So I decided it was time to talk to God about this problem. Dear God, I wrote in a letter, did you know there are children who are forced to work in the rubbish heap? I stopped. Of course he knew. Then I realized that it was his will that I had seen them. He was showing me what my life might look like if I couldn't go to school. Until then, I had believed a magic pencil could change the world. Now I knew I would have to do something. I didn't know what it was, but I asked God for the strength and courage to make the world a better place. I signed my letter, rolled it up, tied it to a piece of wood, placed a dandelion on top, and floated it in a stream that flows in the Swat River. Surely God would find it there.
Atticus was feeble. He was nearly 50. When Jem and I asked him why he was so old, he said he got started late, which we felt reflected upon his abilities and manliness. He was much older than the parents of our school contemporaries, and there was nothing Jem or I could say about him when our classmates said, my father. Jem was football crazy. Atticus was never too tired to play keep away, but when Jem wanted to tackle him, Atticus would say, I'm too old for that, son. Our father didn't do anything. He worked in an office, not in a drugstore. Atticus did not drive a dump truck for the county. He was not the sheriff. He did not farm, work in a garage, or do anything that could possibly arouse the admiration of anyone. Besides that, he wore glasses. He was nearly blind in his left eye, and he said left eyes were the tribal curse of the Finches. Whenever he wanted to see something well, he'd turn his head and look from his right eye. He did not do the things our schoolmates' fathers did. He never went hunting. He did not play poker or fish or drink or smoke. He sat in the living room and read. With these attributes, however, he would not remain as inconspicuous as we wished him to. That year, the school buzzed with talk about him defending Tom Robinson, none of which was complimentary. After my bout with Cecil Jacobs, when I committed myself to a policy of cowardice, word got around that Scout Finch wouldn't fight anymore. Her daddy wouldn't let her. This was not entirely correct. I wouldn't fight publicly for Atticus, but the family was private ground. I would fight anyone from a third cousin upwards, tooth and nail. Francis Hancock, for example, knew that. When he gave us our air rifles, Atticus wouldn't teach us to shoot. Uncle Jack instructed us in the rudiments thereof. He said Atticus wasn't interested in guns. Atticus said to Jem one day, I'd rather you shot at tin cans in the backyard, but I know you will go for the birds. Shoot all the blue jays you want, if you can hit them, but remember, it's a sin to kill a mockingbird. That was the only time I heard Atticus say it was a sin to do something, and I asked Miss Maudie about it. Your father's right, she said. Mockingbirds don't do one thing but make music for us to enjoy. They don't eat up people's gardens, don't nest in corn cribs, they don't do one thing but sing their hearts out for us, and that's why it's a sin to kill a mockingbird. Thank you.
Thank you. I was very pleased to receive the invitation and totally frightened because one of the things that makes me most nervous is reading aloud to a crowd. So, years ago I heard a student say, and I think it was a quote from someone, sometimes something is so important that you lend your voice to it even if it shakes. So it was. A little black girl yearns for the blue eyes of a little white girl, and the horror at the height of her yearning is exceeded only by the evil of its fulfillment. We saw her sometimes, Frida and I, after the baby came too soon and died, after the gossip and the slow wagging of heads. She was so sad to see. Grown people looked away. Children, those who were not frightened of her, laughed outright. The damage done was total. She spent her days, her tendril sap-green days, walking up and down, her head jerking to the beat of a drummer so distant only she could hear. Elbows bent, hands on shoulders, she frailed her arms like a bird in an eternal, grotesquely futile effort to fly, beating the air, a winged but grounded bird, intend on the blue void it could never reach, could not even see, but which filled the valleys of the mind. We honed our egos on her, padded our character with her frailty, and yarned in the fantasy of our strength. And fantasy it was, for we were not strong, only aggressive. We were not free, merely licensed. We were not compassionate. We were polite, not good, but not well behaved. We courted death in order to call ourselves brave and hid like thieves from life. We substituted good grammar for intellect. We switched habits to stimulate maturity. We rearranged lies and called it truth, seeing in the new patterns of an old idea the revelation and the word. She, however, stepped over into madness, a madness which protected her from us simply because it bored us in the end.
This is having my daughter after reading the book, and we both came to the revelation. We realized why Kim gave us the book, so we're going to get to it. Before you were born, a girl learned a song. Her principal, James Weldon Johnson, and his brother, John Rosamond Johnson, had written a hymn for a celebration of President Abraham Lincoln's birthday. The girl wanted to make them proud. She hummed the song on her way home from school. She practiced it as she did her chores. On the big day, February 12th, 1900, she was part of a choir 500 strong. Back straight, head high, heart and mouth open, she sang. Lift every voice and sing, till earth and heaven ring with harmonies of liberty. And she kept on singing as she grew up.
She sang it when she rocked her baby boy to sleep. It was a part of her that she wanted to pass on. And you know what? Her little boy learned the song. And one day he stood in the choir loft and gazed at the glowing faces. Back straight, head high, heart and mouth open, he sang. Let our rejoicing rise, high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea.
And he kept on singing. He sang it when he came back from World War II and faced discrimination. He sang it when he joined the NAACP. And you know what? His little girl learned that song. She sang it each morning at school. He sang it to his wife and to his baby daughter, and he rocked her to sleep. It was a part of them. He wanted to pass on. Then came the day that broke the nation's heart. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was killed. The next morning, she saw her teacher cry. Sobs replaced singing. Then whimpers and silence. Who would lead them now?
The song whispered an answer, back straight, head high, heart and mouth open, she sang. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us.
And you know what? That song is a part of you. Sing it when you score a victory. Sing it when tough times get you down. Sing and think of all the people who sang before you, who carried on and pushed forward even when everything was against them. Sing and remember, they never stopped believing. Keep rising, keep pushing, keep passing it on, and keep on keeping on. Thank you.
If they ban a book, it is likely because there's something in there that is worth reading. So I encourage you to go read more from all of these wonderful banned books that are out there today. All right. I can't remember when I first started seeing pronouns listed on people's profiles on Tumblr. 2015? Earlier? But the first person I remember getting to know who uses they, them pronouns was one of my CCA teachers, Melanie Gilman. They are a comics professor, author of As the Crow Flies, an all-around excellent person. My classmates and I were determined not to misgender them, but we made frequent mistakes. I would correct people. What did Melanie say was due today? Redacted, incorrect pronoun, said to turn in our business cards. You mean they said. Ugh, yes. Only to turn around and make the same mistake 30 seconds later. What's due to Melanie? Redacted, said the business cards. You mean they said. Ugh. Learning to use new words is hard at first, but I practiced all semester. They teach our class. They are non-binary. They draw comics. They make good PowerPoints. They like kayaking. They wear cool earrings. Somewhere along the way, it clicked. What's due to Melanie on Monday? They want our website graphics. So I was on his blog last week. Actually, Rob uses they, them pronouns now. Do they? That's so cool. Right, so I was on their blog, and it became easy. Female pronouns feel less and less accurate lately when I hear them used for me. But what would feel accurate? He, him, his? They, them, theirs? He or they? He or they? What am I? Asking people to start using new pronouns for me seems like such a huge request, though. I know people will mess up, and then what do I do? If I correct someone, will they get mad? I'd love to use these pronouns, but I don't want to inconvenience people. So instead of asking people to do something to make you feel more comfortable, you'd rather just feel a little uncomfortable all the time? You'd rather internalize and carry that discomfort every time someone who loves you misgenders you? Well, when you put it that way, as I pondered a pronoun change, I began to think of gender less as a scale and more as a landscape. Some people are born in the mountains while others are born by the sea. Some people are happy to live in the place they were born, while others must make a journey to reach the climate in which they can flourish and grow. Between the ocean and the mountains is a wild forest. That is where I want to make my home. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sarah Wasserman, and my pronouns are she, her. I'm thrilled to be here today, along with my colleague, Liz Bagonis, representing the Bayard Rustin Center for Social Justice. Our work at the center is to empower individuals at the intersection of LGBTQIA+ identities and racial justice to reclaim their power, dismantle systems of oppression, and build a liberated future through community organizing, education, and advocacy. And that is exactly what today's event is about. I'm going to be reading from This Book is Gay. This is a pretty hotly contested one, and I'm just going to read something from the introduction, but I highly recommend the book. When I was in high school, there's no way a book like this would have made it to me. But what if it had? I imagine I would have figured out things sooner. I would have been less clueless, because this is, if nothing else, an extraordinarily helpful book of clues. And here's the thing about clues. They don't tell you what to do, but they do show you what you can do. This book is gay, but you don't have to be gay in order to read it. Whether you're curious about the gay people in your life, clue, they're there. Questioning your own identity, or very sure of your own identity, thank you very much. But a little lost in the ins and outs of, well, the ins and outs, this is a crash course to prevent you from crashing. The honest truths in a world where there are few simple truths. I've been gay longer than any current teenager has been alive. Pauses, freaks out a little, but I still found a new clue or two dozen. The back of the book says, you will be entertained, you will be informed, but most importantly, you will know that however you identify or don't, you are exceptional. You matter, and so does this book.
She says, my presence here is illegal. It's forbidden for us to be alone with the commanders. We're for breeding purposes. We aren't concubines, geisha girls, courtesans. On the contrary, everything possible has been done to remove us from that category. There's supposed to be nothing entertaining about us, no room to be permitted for the flowering of secret lusts, no special favors are to be wheedled by them or us. There are to be no toeholds for love. We're two-legged wombs, that's all, sacred vessels, ambulatory chalices. What secrets, what male totems are kept in here? She's outside the door. I'm told to enter. I open the door, step in. What is on the other side is normal life. I should say, what is on the other side looks like normal life. There's a desk, of course, with a CompuTalk on it, and a black leather chair behind it. There's a potted plant on the desk, a pen holder, set, papers. There's an oriental rug on the floor and a fireplace without a fire in it. There's a small sofa covered in brown plush, a television set, an end table, a couple of chairs. But all around the walls, there are bookcases. They're filled with books, books and books and books, right out in plain view. No locks, no boxes. No wonder we can't come in here. It's an oasis of the forbidden. I try not to stare. I'd like you to play a game of Scrabble with me, he says. I hold myself absolutely rigid. I keep my face unmoving. So that's what's in this forbidden room. Scrabble. I want to laugh, shriek with laughter, fall off my chair. This was the game of old women, old men in the summer and retirement villas to be played where there was nothing good on television, or of adolescence once long, long ago. My mother had a set. Now, of course, it's something different. Now it's forbidden for us. Now it's dangerous. Now it's indecent. Now it's something he can't do with his wife. Now it's desirable. Now he's compromised himself. It's as if he's offered me drugs. All right, I say as if indifferently. I can hardly speak.
Draw me a star. And the artist drew a star. Draw me the sun, said the star, and the artist drew the sun. It was a warm sun. Draw me a tree, said the sun, and the artist drew a tree. It was a lovely tree. Draw me a woman and a man, and the artist drew the handsome couple. And I will just add this little note that he writes in the back. Dear friends, when I was a young child, my German Oma, grandmother, scribbled a star for me as she recited this nonsense poem. Krie, kra, kroten, fuß, ganz, I'm just guessing here, ganzen laufen barfuß, krie, kra, toad's foot, geese walk barefoot. Then last summer on my vacation, I dreamed about shooting stars. The first stars fell into the valleys of the distant hills. More stars fell closer and closer. Finally, a very bright star fell directly on me, not hurting me at all. In fact, it felt pleasant, kind of tingly. After that, the star and I rose up and traveled across the night sky. I had a beginning for a book and an ending. The middle was easy. Sincerely, Eric Carl. As you know. I know, why was this book banned? It's a great question. I kind of went by it, and I don't know if you got it, but I think it was this page. I know. I know.
Go. Neither or neither. You may say it either way, in keeping with the theme of the book. That's by me, Airlie Anderson. Neither. Once upon a time, there were two kinds, this and that. These and those. One or the other. Until you might see what's happening down here. An egg. Honk! What kind are you? I'm both. You can't be both. You must be neither. I'm neither? Honk! Where did you come from? I'm from the land of this and that, but I am neither, so I'm looking for somewhere else to fit in.
This isn't somewhere else, but you will fit in here. Where is here? The land of all. So many different kinds. Come play with us. But I'm different from everyone here. I'm neither red, nor orange, nor yellow, nor blue. Exactly. Once upon a time, there were many kinds. This and that, somewhat and whatnot, either, very, sort of, just, rather, a little, neither, and both. And all were welcome. This book is for absolutely anyone who feels that they don't fit a stereotype, and anyone who finds beauty in nonconformity. In my opinion, banning this book is saying, you must be either this or that. Conform. There is no room for nuance. And I think we could all benefit from pausing in the in-between, to have a good think about gray areas, and to be open-minded enough to read a story about a bunny bird without fear. Thank you.
I've admired Barbara Ehrenreich's brilliant essays about poverty for a long time. So when I was honored to be invited to participate and I looked at a list of banned books, I was a little surprised to see that her 2001 publication, Nickel and Dimed, was among them. Denounced for, among other reasons, promoting socialism, offensive language, political viewpoint, religious viewpoint, promoting economic fallacies, and advocating for the use of illegal drugs. Are we seeing themes here? The book chronicles her experiment to live as the working poor do. The idea was to spend a month in each setting and see whether I could find a job and earn in that time the money to pay a second month's rent. My aim here was just to see whether I could match income to expenses as the truly poor attempt to do every day. She chooses 3 locations: Key West, Florida, Minneapolis, Minnesota, and Maine. I chose Maine for its whiteness, but it made it the perfect place for a blue-eyed, English-speaking Caucasian to infiltrate the low-wage workforce, no questions asked. I downloaded the Help Wanted ads from the Portland Press Herald's website. At least 3 of the 1,000 or so ads I scanned promised fun, casual workplace environments. Maybe, I reasoned, when you give white people a whole state to themselves, they treat one another real nice. That was not the environment in which she worked. It is common among the non-poor to think of poverty as a sustainable condition. Austere, perhaps, but they get by somehow, don't they? They are always with us. What is harder for the non-poor to see is poverty as acute distress. The lunch that consists of Doritos or hot dog rolls leading to faintness before the end of the shift. The home that is also a car or a van. The illness or injury that must be worked through with gritted teeth because there's no sick pay or health insurance, and the loss of one day's pay will mean no groceries for the next. These experiences are not part of a sustainable lifestyle, even a lifestyle of chronic deprivation and relentless low-level punishment. They are, by almost any standard of subsistence, emergency situations. And that is how we should see the poverty of so many millions of low-wage Americans, as a state of emergency. Thank you.
Author A.M. Holmes was slated to be here today to read from Jack, her debut novel. written when she was just 19 and still a student, but had to send her regrets due to another commitment. Jack, a highly praised coming-of-age story, has faced challenges over the years since its publication in 1990, as it centers around a 15-year-old boy's struggles as he grapples with issues of divorce and sexuality in his family and among his friends. Most notably, the revelation that his father is gay and now living with a male partner after his parents' divorce. Like many books that are challenged or banned, it is the centering of the LGBTQ+ community in this novel that proves problematic to those who wish to have it removed from school libraries and reading lists. We will be adding a replacement copy of Jack, this copy right here. We'll be adding it to the Princeton Public Library collection, as it seems our copy was checked out several years ago and never returned. I hope it found its way to the reader who needed it.
My mother is from Germany. She was born there in 1937, and she has kind of vague memories of repression under the Nazis, but very vivid memories of living in East Germany under the communists. And one of the reasons why she came to this country was to escape the kind of repression that we're talking about today. And it's pretty shocking for her and pretty shocking for me that this kind of thing is now happening in the United States. This very un-American thing that she left East Germany for. The second, I'm a gay man who grew up in the 60s and 70s, and I didn't see a book about being gay until I was in high school, and I didn't read a book about being gay until I was in college. And so I just kind of imagine how different my life would have been in terms of the trauma I might have avoided if I could have read books like this when I was young. I read lots of books, and they were all either overtly or covertly or implicitly straight. So it's pretty clear that books don't impact your sexuality, but they certainly can impact your quality of life. In the middle of New York City, there's a great big park called Central Park. Children love to play there. It has a toy boat pond where they can sail their boats. It has a carousel to ride on in the summer and an ice rink to skate on in the winter. Best of all, it has its very own zoo. Every day, families of all kinds go to visit the animals that live there. 2 penguins in the penguin house were a little bit different. One was named Roy, and the other was named Silo. Roy and Silo were both boys, but they did everything together. Their keeper, Mr. Gramsay, noticed the 2 penguins and thought to himself, they must be in love. Then Mr. Gramsay got an idea. He found an egg that needed to be cared for, and he brought it to Roy and Silo's nest. Sorry. Roy and Silo knew just what to do.
Tim O'Brien is a friend of mine, and so we're trying to figure out why the book was banned. I said, well, was it banned because of the occasional gore, or was it banned because it showed men, soldiers, as being fallible human beings? I think it was banned basically because it was true, like so many of these other books. In a true war story, if there's a moral at all, it's like the thread that makes the cloth. You can't tease it out. You can't extract the meaning without unraveling the deeper meaning. And in the end, really, there's nothing much to say about a true war story except maybe, oh. True war stories do not generalize. They do not indulge in abstraction or analysis. For example, war is hell. As a moral declaration, the old truism seems perfectly true, and yet because it abstracts, because it generalizes, I can't believe it with my stomach. Nothing turns inside. It comes down to gut instinct. A true war story, if truly told, makes the stomach believe. This one does it for me. I've told it before, many times, many versions, But here's what actually happened. We crossed that river and marched west into the mountains. On the third day, my friend Kurt Lemon stepped on a booby-trapped artillery round. He was playing catch with Rat Kiley, laughing, and then he was dead. The trees were thick. It took nearly an hour for the dust off. Later, higher in the mountains, we came across a baby VC water buffalo. What it was doing there, I don't know. No farms, no paddies, but we chased it down and got a rope around it and led it along to a deserted village where we set up for the night. After supper, Rat Kiley went over and stroked its nose. He opened up a can of sea rations, pork and beans, but the baby buffalo wasn't interested. Rat shrugged. He stepped back and shot it through the right front knee. The animal did not make a sound. It went down hard, then got up again, and Rat took careful aim and shot off an ear. He shot it in the hindquarters and in the little hump at its back. He shot it twice in the flanks. It wasn't to kill, it was to hurt. He put the rifle muzzle up against the mouth and shot the mouth away. Nobody said much. The whole platoon stood there watching, feeling all kinds of things, but there wasn't a great deal of pity for the baby water buffalo. Rat's friend, Kurt Lemon, was dead. Rat Kiley had lost his best friend in the world. Later in the week, Rat would write a long personal letter to the guy's sister, who would not write back, but for now, it was simply a question of pain.
And one of the things that I teach my students when I'm teaching them to paint is that there's an infinite amount of creativity flow that you can do when creating art. And creating a book is also an art. So censorship is like imprisonment. Warm loves warm. Let's be married, says warm to warm. Yes, answers warm. Let's be married. I can be the groom, says the worm. I can too, says the worm. We can be both. Amazing, amazing, says the spider. Really? Asks the beetle and the bees. Wait, says the cricket. That isn't how it's done. That isn't how it's always been done. Then we'll just change how it's done, says the worm. Yes, says the worm. And so they were married, because warm loves warm.
It was my grandmother who had the book of paintings. It was a massive thing. Fyodorov held up his hands to mark the dimensions of the book in the air. If he was to be believed, it was an enormous book. She told us it was given to her by an admirer from Europe when she was a girl of 15, a man called Julian. If that is true, I do not know. My grandmother was one for telling stories. Even more than how she came by the book, how she managed to hold on to it through the war remains a great mystery to me. That she did not try to sell it or burn it for fuel, because there was a time when people would burn anything, that it was not taken from her, as it would have been a very difficult thing to hide. All of these things are remarkable. But when I was a boy, it was many years past the war, and she was an old woman. We did not go to museums to look at paintings in those days. We would walk past the Winter Palace, a marvelous place, but then we did not go inside. I imagine there was not the money for such things. But in the evenings, my grandmother brought out her book and told my brothers and me to go and wash our hands. I was not allowed to even touch the pages until I was 10, but still I washed my hands just for the privilege of looking.
You may be wondering, what is this book exactly? Because you're used to reading fictional stories, fairy tales, fantasies about heroes and monsters, or sleepy stories about funny talking times way before any of you were born. You've probably read several nonfiction books too. Books about the solar system, cool animals like wolverines, historical events such as the Revolutionary War, and biographies of trailblazers like Harriet Tubman, Rosa Parks, or Martin Luther King Jr. When you've read books about people and events from the past, you may have thought, what does this have to do with my life today? Well, this book includes the past and is directly connected to our lives as we live them right this minute. Until we learn to talk about race, the poison of racism won't go away. I invite you to consider Stamped. Banned for obvious reasons, but hopefully purchased and brought into your lives and homes and your consciousness forever. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you for those that have hung in for this entire event. We thank you. All of our readers, you were wonderful. The readings were as diverse as the reasons why books are banned. And we thank you all for your thoughtful selections and for being here today. Thank you again to Labyrinth Books and Princeton University Press, our partners here at the library in hosting this event. And thank you to the colleagues at the library who helped put this all together. You know who you are. There's too numerous to name. And thank you so much for being here at the Stand with the Band, Read Out. I would say happy banned books week, that doesn't seem right, but yes, let's uplift the freedom to read. Thank you.